Hello everyone, hope you're having a good NFL Sunday. Mine, unfortunately, there was a small bump, featured a small bump in the road, no pun intended. But I hope you're having a good time watching football. Football is officially back. I know it kicked off last Sunday, but to me, it actually starts on the first Sunday of the season. That's just me. So, we are going to recap the St. Louis Rams 34-31 overtime victory over the Seattle Seahawks. Before we get started, though, I would like to say thank you to my friends Brianna and Stanley for hosting their football breakfast pate earlier today. It was great seeing you. Nice to see the changes that you made in your house. Good to see. I like the new layout you got in the living room with all the remodeling that you've done. So thanks again for hosting us, and I had a great time seeing you guys as well as other friends and other members of your family. Okay, so first off, it is always hard to take the first loss of any season. Anytime your team loses for the first time, it's like you just got punched in the gut. It doesn't matter if it's week 4, the Super Bowl, Patriots, or if it's week 1 or 2 or whatever. It is always difficult to accept the fact that you're not going to win every single game. And but I will say there are some good things that I saw today by the Seattle Seahawks. There are also some negative things. But overall, for the most part, I thought it was a really entertaining, competitive game. And it could have gone either way. It really could have. There were times where it looked like St. Louis had everything locked up, and they were about to, kick an extra field goal and, put the game out of reach. And then they would fumble the ball, and the next thing you know, the Seahawks had that opportunity. The Seahawks had the opportunity to close them out during the final drive of regulation, which eventually led to the game going into overtime. So overall, it was a really competitive game. Very even game, too. Just going over some stats. 21 first downs by Seattle compared to St. Louis's 19. Passing first downs, 10 for Seattle, 13 for St. Louis. Seattle did have more first downs on rushing, 10-5. They won that category. Each team got one first down with one penalty. Third down efficiencies were basically around 50% or a little higher, but not by much. Seattle was 8 of 19 going of third down efficiencies compared to St. Louis's 6 for 11. Total yards, Seattle had 343, and for St. Louis, 352. And each team had the ball 11 times. So really, really even game. Seattle, because of the loss, before we continue, they now drop to 2-4 all-time under Pete Carroll. 1-3 with Russell Wilson as the quarterback. Just for whatever reason, Seattle just has not been able to figure out the Edward Jones Dome. And if the St. Louis Rams do move out of St. Louis, I don't want them to move out of St. Louis, but if you look at the silver lining, at least I don't have to worry about the team going to the Edward Jones Dome. Just for whatever reason, Seattle, they had a good run for years in the Edward Jones Dome. They just hand St. Louis loss after loss, but for whatever reasons, St. Louis just hangs around in the Edward Jones Dome, and then they come to Seattle and they lay an egg, which they should do in the Edward Jones Dome, but they don't. But anyway, so like I said in my preview video, watch out for St. Louis's quarterback, Nick Foles. He threw for 297 yards. By the way, all these stats are coming from ESPN.com, even though I know you probably have them on your phone and Facebook and social media. So, but Nick Foles threw for 297 yards, 1 touchdown, and averaged 11 yards per completion. And that either could mean that the Seahawks are giving up too many yards after the catch, or Nick Foles did a very good job spreading out the field. It's one of those two, and I think it was a combination of both. Russell Wilson, the quarterback for the Seahawks, he threw for 251 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. He was sacked 6 times, which we'll talk about later on. Like I also said in the video before, this game was going to come down to special teams. And if you are a coach, we're talking special teams galore. I mean, both teams had had some good rushing. They rushed the quarterback more so St. Louis than Seattle. But each team had a punt return for a touchdown. Each team, look at the last play of the game, the 4th and 1, giving the ball to Lynch, and what happens? St. Louis steps to the box and forces Marshawn Lynch to go to the side instead of the front. By the time that he's able to move forward, the plays are already dead because he's tackled. So again, this game came down to another stance, a 4th down stance by one of these teams, either of them being the St. Louis Rams or the Seahawks, which goes back to what I talked about before when the Seahawks, last time they won in St. Louis, in 2014, when the Seahawks had the 4th down stance in the last play of the game. So this was a great special teams game. It really was. First half was all about defense. Score was 10-10. Seahawks looked a little out of it, and then things started, looking a little bit more positive at the beginning before St. Louis just went on fire, started scoring points after points, and then Seattle's defense and special teams led them back into the game. So the second half turned into a small shootout. Keys to the game. The offensive line was a problem. I did not watch any preseason game this year. I only had heard about the offensive line, and now I know what people were talking about because, as I mentioned before, Russell Wilson was sacked 6 times. Very difficult to win a football game when your quarterback is not getting the protection that he needs. There was also some times where Marshawn Lynch looked like he was completely out of the game. He couldn't get anything. I know he had some big runs, and I will give him credit to where credit was due. He rushed for 73 yards and averaged 4 yards per carry. But there were some times where it looked like him and the Seattle offensive unit was out of sync because they couldn't run the football as effectively as they would like. Seattle had a very difficult time defending in the middle of the field. There were some times where they would try to rush Nick Foles and get to him, and that would leave open some wide receivers and tight ends in the middle of the field that would allow for big games for St. Louis, which I thought was really interesting because normally the Legion of Boom is not like that. I don't know if that's just because Cam Chancellor wasn't there or St. Louis saw something that nobody else saw, but Seattle had a very difficult time guarding the Rams within the line of scrimmage. I thought going deep, Nick Foles did have a couple of good deep bombs on the corners on the sideline, but for the most part, the majority of the passes were right smack dab in the middle of the field. So that could be a concern later on in the season. But finally, Seattle just could not take advantage of the 3 turnovers that they got. Yes, they were able to get a touchdown, that touchdown after 1, but when you get a turnover, you got to punch it in the end zone. It's an extra drive, it's extra time. Seattle actually did win the time of possession. I think it was something, I don't have it in front of me, but I think it was something like 37 minutes compared to St. Louis's 28, so that was good. But you need to punch it in the end zone, and in a lot of times Seattle got the ball, and they either got a field goal or didn't punch it in. So that basically wraps up. Some other things just to acknowledge. First off, periodically, Pete Carroll will make a questionable play call, or somebody, whether it's Darrell Bevel or just. And I mentioned this before in terms of when I went to a game during the Tavares Jackson year, and Stephen Hauschka attempted a 61-yard field goal and missed it by 10 yards. I mean, the ball didn't even make it to the goalpost. And then, of course, you have the infamous terrible decision that the Seahawks made during Super Bowl 49. And now you have another one. Why are you attempting an onside kick for overtime? Now, I can understand the whole thing of Nick Foles and the St. Louis offense they were clicking, and so I can understand you're trying to get them off the field. But what I don't understand is you are playing with fire when it comes to that late in the game. Now, if the Seahawks make that play, I'm praising Pete Carroll. We're not having this conversation. But if you look at mathematically, why not kick the ball deep, worst case scenario, kick it out of the end zone, and then make Nick Foles go the distance, and the Rams go the distance, instead of just putting the ball on your own 49-yard line. And I think that played a huge deal in overtime. So I question Pete Carroll's decision. That's not the reason why we lost. The reason why we lost was, as I said before, the inability to guard in the middle of the field, the offensive line, and not taking advantage of turnovers. But overall, the Seattle Seahawks should not be putting themselves in that type of a position where they can make those types of calls. And Pete Carroll, I get it. I'm not going to question what he's done. I mean, obviously his system is working overall. I mean, we've gone to 2 Super Bowls. We've had winning seasons. We have the Legion of Boom. Everybody's excited about the team now compared to what it used to be, in the 90s and at the end of Mike Holmgren and Jim Mora year. I get that. But just periodically he has a tendency to make these weird calls at the weirdest times during the game. So there's that. The other thing I wanted to talk about is the NFL overtime rules. I frankly can't stand them. I understand that sudden death is ultimately what you want. People love sudden death. That is in my opinion, hockey and baseball have the greatest overtime systems in place. However, I don't like this whole one team gets the ball at the coin toss, and if they score a touchdown, the game's over, or if they kick a field goal, then the other team gets a chance to score a field goal, and then it goes into sudden death. I would just rather have it be one of 2 ways. The first way, set it up like the college system is. But one tweak. Instead of starting on your opponent's 25-yard line and then switching possessions until the score is not tied, start on your own 20-yard line and make your team and have the defense make you go the distance of the field. And do that over and over again, like the college game, until, again, the score is not tied. Or, enough with this whole, you get a field goal, okay, we can still play. Okay, let's kick a field goal, okay, now it's sudden death. No. Just have both teams have possession of the ball. And, if you want to do the whole kickoff and, not start at the 20, fine. But just go ahead and give each team the ball. If they want to go for 2 points after scoring a touchdown, that's fine. Then have the other team score a touchdown and go for 2 points to force another possession. Seriously, go ahead and just give the 2 teams 2 possessions. If it's tied after that, then have it go to sudden death. Screw this overtime, screw this field goal touchdown rule thing, or field goal. It's complicated, it's weird, it's not entertaining. Just change it up. Just make so that way both teams have a fair shot at scoring in overtime. And if the game goes, 15 minutes without or in overtime, then fine. I can deal with ties. That's fine. There are ties in the NFL. I can deal with ties as long as there's a legitimate overtime system. And I'm not just saying that because of this game. I've actually had a problem with the NFL overtime rules ever since I got introduced to the league. So that's just my 2 cents in regards to some of the other stories coming out of the game. Again, the St. Louis Rams defeat the Seattle Seahawks 34-31 in overtime. Seattle drops to 0-1 to start the young 2015 campaign, while the St. Louis Rams go to 1-0. All right, so I know that there's probably a bunch of places you can get this information, but you cannot conclude, provided this uploads, you cannot conclude a recap without an NFL scoreboard. So I am going to give you scores that are accurate as of this point, which is 3:17 p.m. on Sunday, September 13th. All right, let's move on past the Seahawks score. Right now, in the third quarter, the New Orleans Saints have the ball in Arizona. The Arizona Cardinals lead the New Orleans Saints 14-13. Just at the end of the third, we have the San Diego Chargers hosting the Detroit Lions. The Lions lead that one 21-20, with the Chargers having the ball. Early third quarter, Tampa Bay Buccaneers have the ball, but they are losing big to the Tennessee Titans 35-7. Almost in the early third, the Oakland Raiders are hosting the Cincinnati Bengals. Bengals have the ball and lead 24-0. Midway through the third, we got Denver hosting Baltimore, and the Ravens lead the Broncos 13-9. So now we have some finals for you. We have the Green Bay Packers, the Seattle Seahawks' next opponent. They defeat the Chicago Bears 31-23. The Kansas City Chiefs take down the Houston Texans in Houston 27-7. And the New York Jets, hosting the Cleveland Browns, beat the Browns 31-10. The Buffalo Bills take down the Indianapolis Colts in Buffalo 27-14. The Miami Dolphins score 10 unanswered points in the fourth quarter to beat the Washington Redskins 17-10. And then in the battle of the 1996 or 97, it was mid-90s, expansion teams, the Carolina Panthers beat the Jacksonville Jaguars in Florida 20-9. As the Thursday night game, it took place a couple days ago. In case you haven't heard, it was the New England Patriots 28-21 over the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then tomorrow for Monday Night Football, we got a doubleheader. We have the Atlanta Falcons hosting the Philadelphia Eagles, which will be followed by the Santa Clara 40-Winers hosting the Minnesota Vikings. So that will do it for this recap. Week 1 is in the books, and coming up next, at some point within the next 24, 48 hours, we will start looking toward the Seattle Seahawks Green Bay Packers game in the Sunday night showdown next week, kickoff at 5 p.m. Pacific time. So thanks for watching. Again, feel free to comment anything you want to see, anything you want to say. Feel free to comment on Facebook and YouTube. And thanks for watching. Again, the St. Louis Rams beat the Seattle Seahawks in overtime, 34-31. Thanks for watching. Go Hawks.